Hello, today I'm going to talk about tube testers. I got into tube testers years ago as a guitar player with tube amps and like that, and electronics. And the first testers that I bought were emission testers. And then I graduated into the transconductance type uh, tube testers. Um, I've bought a lot of tube testers and fixed them and everything else. And for all the tube testers I've bought, I probably could have had a really nice Hickok or a state-of-the-art one. But anyway, here I am. So first tube tester I'm going to talk about is the Precise 111. I have two of them. And I really do like these machines because they do a lot. You can do noise testing. And you get transconductance numbers off of them. It's a really versatile machine. However, a lot of them were hand built, and so you might find some variances. And there's a variance with these two because this one's an earlier model and this one's a later model, but there's both the same. Again, a lot of them were hand built. I believe both of these were probably in a kit form at one time. I've gone through and changed the capacitors and stuff like that. And another thing that I've done with them is there's a bias control on here. So the bias control is important. And what I've done on both of them is I put in a plug here that I can check bias with my multimeter. So I can set this, and I'm a lot more confident because what I found out is when you read bias off the gauge, it's not correct always. It's pretty close, but anyway, that's one of the modifications I did. The other thing you'll find on these is these switches are crap. And I had some replacements, but I haven't replaced any. But if you get one of these, you're probably going to have to about 1,000,000 times to get some of those to work. If you have a problem with them, work on those switches. Now, another thing, Jim Lindeas has a really good set of videos on these and how to calibrate them and all that. And in his video, he gets shocked and he goes through and he looks for where the problem is, can't find the problem, so he grounds it. And that's what I've done on both of these. And I've, on both of these, I experienced the same thing. When you get these, they're going to have a hot chassis. So you're going to get 120 or 60 volts on the chassis when you plug them in. And I kind of looked through it, and I'm not certain how that's happening, but I did the same thing that Jim did. I put a grounded plug in. So these are dangerous otherwise. Now, why do I have two? Well, first of all, I like this model tube tester. But another thing I'm going to get to here in a little bit is that you always don't get the same results off of them. So that's kind of it for the Precise 111 for right now. Over here I've got a BK 550 Dyna-Quik. This is actually a pretty cool instrument. I also have a 500. The 500, and these read mutual conductance as well too, but the 500, if you have like a 12AX7 with a twin triode, it's gonna add the two values together. This one will give you a separate value because you can test one and then you can test the other. Now, the cool thing about this is it is quick. You have a couple of settings, plug your tube in, and you go. The shorts thing absolutely works. The gas thing is a little funky sometimes, but this gives me pretty reliable results that I can duplicate. So these are not really all that expensive. You can find them used, and I like it. It is really quick. And the next one I've got over here is an Eico 667, and I've really come to kind of like this machine too. It's a little more complicated to set up, but it's not bad. You can do shorts and it's a dynamic conductance. What it does, if you read the manual, it supposedly is an additive number for a few different tests, and it comes up as a percentage on the good scale, which is 80 to 140%. I kind of like getting a GMHOS number personally, but it does work. The percentage thing does work. So got 4 tube tests. Well, why do I have 4? Well, because number one, I just enjoy working on them and fixing them and calibrating and stuff like that. But the other thing is too, is you don't always get the same readings from each one. So if you look down here, I've got, this is my one of my collections of tubes. And what I've done is, when I test tubes, I keep a notebook, and I keep all the readings and stuff like that on these pages, so I can go back. Well, the important thing is when you're, here's what I found. Some people call them like a bogey tube or whatever, but through my testing, what I found is I have certain tubes that I use as standards. And when I get ready to test, let's say a 12AX7 or something, the first thing I'll do is, because I do test them on usually 3 or 4 of these instruments, the first thing I do is I take my standard out and I test my standard. And I make certain that I get a result similar or the same to the result that I got the last time I tested. Okay, that tells me that my machine is properly working to the standard that I have in my mind. And then I have, that is my standard good tube, and that's the tube that I compare. So I'm not really always looking for a handbook value that comes out of the receiving tube manual, okay? I mean, I use that as a guide, but what I'm really looking for is a comparison to a good standard tube. Now, my recommendation would be, if you have a tube tester or tube testers, that would be the way to do it. Make certain you have a couple of good tubes on hand for each of the tubes that you're testing, and use that as a standard to compare, because I'm not always going to get, like I was doing 6L6s on these this morning, and the number that I get off of this is not exactly the number I get off of this. However, I can compare it to a well-known tube that I have that's been tested multiple times and I know is good. So that's how I would go about doing it. The other thing is, it's kind of ironic that tube testers generally have tubes in them. So these have a couple of rectifier tubes. The Dyna-Quik has a rectifier tube. And another thing I found is, when I want to test tubes, I plug these in, 15 minutes minimum warm-up time. Otherwise, I've noticed I get drifty results and stuff like that. So all the capacitors, you'll be expected to change those, and maybe a few resistors. You really have to kind of go through all these old tube testers and get them functioning as best you can. But the one thing I have found is, especially like with these, I've had a couple of Dyna-Quiks, and you're not always going to get the same reading. So the reading is best compared to standard tube. So that's my opinion. This is just how I do this. I have other tube testers, but these are the ones that I use most of the time, and the ones that work well for me to sort through tubes and determine the kind of tube that I want to put in my amplifier. So I hope that's helpful. Leave comments below, and thanks for watching.